Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack here. Thursday now, the 14th day of August 2025. Glad you could tune in this afternoon because we have a lot to talk about. The tropics are very busy. 98L, that's going to be headed towards northern Mexico, southern Texas by this time tomorrow, maybe tomorrow evening. And then, of course, the big story out there, Tropical Storm Erin. Still lots of questions about it. One thing, though, that is for certain, Erin is going to be a big wave and surf producer. We need to make sure we are focusing on that as a guaranteed impact over the coming days. We'll discuss this and a lot more in today's update. Let's get started with the National Hurricane Center homepage, and we can see our features. There's 98L in the western Gulf area, headed eventually towards, like I said, northern Mexico, southern Texas. Recon on the way out to check out what's going on with that, and we'll get more info later in the day. Here is our tropical storm, moving generally west at about 17 miles per hour, also on its way to becoming eventually a very large and powerful hurricane, especially, I believe, somewhere in this area. That's where it should reach its peak intensity, and man, oh man, this is going to be a big wave generator. So here's what everything looks like on the satellite animation this afternoon. This is our Invest Area 98L. This is Tropical Storm Erin. And look at that right there. Clearly, already some rotation with it. As it comes off the coast of Africa, we might see the Hurricane Center add their little yellow area, what we call an outlook. We call it a verb sometime. It gets outlooked. We turn the word into a verb. But anyway, it might get a mention later today. And while it doesn't look like much, this little spin right in here over the southeastern U.S., I think that plays a role in what happens with our tropical storm. In fact, let's move over to the Vorticity signature and see the different players that way. There's 98L, there's Erin, and oh, look at that piece of energy sitting over mainly Georgia, the Savannah River Valley through here, gradually going to be moving its way out into the Atlantic, and that's going to help to erode that big ridge that's sitting out here. I can show you that as we move forward with the modeling a little bit later on. Let's zoom in, though, on our tropical storm this afternoon. What do we notice? Well, still a little bit displaced. The deep thunderstorm activity is from the low-level center. It's not completely symmetrical just yet. That is helping to keep it moving generally west. It's hard to tell because most of the low-level center itself is finally covered, but I think it's not losing latitude anymore. If anything, it's moving probably due west there, 270 degrees on the compass. The bands, though, to the north, indicating that once the shear lets up and any dry air that remains in here gets mixed out, that this will be well on its way to becoming, again, a very formidable hurricane down the road. Zooming in on our area in the Gulf. Now, this isn't as impressive, clearly, as Erin, but you can see the wind, the airflow moving into this feature. We call that inflow. There's some outflow over here. So it's got, marginal, decent conditions to try to develop. And all of this inclement weather, that's headed for northern Mexico, South Texas. So if you're in South Padre and vicinity, this will be headed your way, and it's going to be crossing very warm water temperatures through its area of probable development, mid to upper 80s. Yeah, that's very warm, and this could develop into a depression. It wouldn't surprise me, to be honest with you, right before it comes into the coast tomorrow afternoon or evening, that this becomes at least our next tropical depression and maybe even our next tropical storm. But remember, these are just labels, names that us mere humans attach. The impacts: squally weather, gusty winds, anywhere where there is onshore flow, maybe some coastal flooding. So just be aware of it if you're visiting South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley region. Going to be kind of a squally day tomorrow and into tomorrow night, it does appear. Now, looking at the modeling, we're going to start, first of all, GFS for today. We can see down here in the Gulf, there's our little blip of energy. That is 98L. And let's watch this first. I'll put this frame by frame. Tries to organize a little bit as it heads towards the coast there, coming inland over South Texas and vicinity by tomorrow. Now look, even again, if this does not become a depression, gets a name, all that classification stuff, that's energy. That's sensible weather, weather that you can feel And boy, you will feel it by way of very heavy rain, squally conditions, things of that nature. Now let's back this up just a little bit, because I want to draw your attention to this piece of energy right here, and then we're going to expand the view out to cover most of the Atlantic basin. And I'll point that piece of energy out to you again. There it is right there. There is our tropical storm. There's this big fat ridge of high pressure. Watch what happens with these features, but first, I'm going to use blue here really to point this out better. Watch what happens with this. That's a terrible arrow as it gets out into the Atlantic. I think this is an important player over the next day or so. It moves out into the Atlantic there, the western Atlantic off the North Carolina coast, and you see what happens. It starts to get strung out overall, and there's more energy stretched out, not related to it. It doesn't get stretched that far. But all of this energy through here, a little surface trough action, that's taking up real estate in the atmosphere, helping to chew away the western Atlantic ridge. Every little piece of action, every energy source out there in the atmosphere, vorticity, storminess, whatever you want to call it, all of that matters. This is 48 hours out. Might as well just move it to that point. And you notice with Erin exactly what happens. It starts to gain latitude indirectly from this feature, and more so from this sitting out here, really narrowing the ridge to the north and west of Erin. But I think that the presence of this energy here and how long it remains, that's 48 hours, just keep moving it to 72. It just kind of stays out there, and you can even see a little bit of counterclockwise turning in here. That just doesn't allow the ridge to fill back in. So Erin continues to gain latitude. Absolutely. That's part of the overall, puzzle, if you will, the players on the field, and that sticks around to 96 hours. That feature is still there. And as long as that's there, the ridge just cannot fill back in. Physics does not allow two different masses to occupy the same space, not in this universe. So while that is there, as insignificant as it looks, look at what it does do. It keeps that little escape route open, and that is in fact what Erin does. It follows that on out between Bermuda and North Carolina by about a week or so, and there's no landfall. Now, of course, we all wonder, well, how accurate is this? Will that really be there? Does the ridge try to fill back in? All those questions that, we all wonder. We don't know for sure. This is the future. This is numeric weather prediction. Yes, it could be wrong, but that's a pretty identifiable feature, as I showed you on the vorticity signature, and you can even see it turning on visible satellite, and does look like it makes its way out over the Atlantic, helps to chew that ridge away, and then that alleyway just doesn't fill back in. Now, what's interesting, let's take a trip. I'm trying to drop everything out, and it's not cooperating. There we go. Let's take a trip, before we look at the waves, back in time to yesterday's Euro. Right when I got done with my video, the 12Z Euro dropped from yesterday, and it gave us this. You remember that? You all saw it. It was a little bit after I popped the video out there. Got it really close to the North Carolina coast. Now, this doesn't show that little piece of energy, but what clearly happens yesterday is the ridge was able to start building back in kind of over the top. This is 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. This is, again, yesterday's run. The ridge started building back in nice and thick right there, big 594 height line, anomalously so, like more than normal. That's what that means. And then even a little bit of a thumb ridge, as we call it, kind of nosing its way over the top or to the north of Erin yesterday. I want to make that very clear. This is not today's run. And it got it much closer to the east coast of the United States. So what about today? Well, let's move this to the initial starting point, 12Z today, and get this all caught up. There we go. How have things evolved? Well, here's 24, 48, 72, 96, 120. Clearly, just a little bit of a 594 height line in here. Everything is just thinner. Overall, there's your gap in there. Just not as much ridging. This is 5 days out. This is 6 days and 7 days. Farther to the east by a pretty good margin from that run yesterday. And let's see, whoops, there it is. That's the run right there. Big difference in what we saw yesterday, right? Right. So let's get this, make sure we're caught up to where we want to be. A week out, fairly far off the coast between Bermuda and Cape Hatteras. But, and that brings me to this, you bet we're going to get some big time waves coming in. This is your significant wave height and combined wind waves and swells. Way big. I mean, dude, this is going to be like surfer paradise for sure. However, this is going to be a beach rescue, beach patrol, whatever you want to call it, ER, ED, like all that. This is going to be a nightmare because people are still going to be going to the beaches. Big waves are going to come in, and this is going to cause a lot of problems. And maybe for areas that are vulnerable, this is what, the 21st, we're about 2 days before new moon. Times of high tide, we could see overwash in some of the more prone areas of the Outer Banks of North Carolina, for example. But it looks like today, anyway, I'm going to emphasize that, today, at 5 to 7 days out, there is enough of an alleyway for Erin to stay away from making a landfall along the U.S. East Coast. Now, that's 8 days. Let's keep it at 7. 7 days is far enough. Again, the big difference is this is much smaller overall, less of an influence, doesn't nose over the top, whatever. It's just starting to look like the pattern is going to be in place to get Erin to stay offshore, but that doesn't mean there will not be potentially some very significant impacts, and we just want to make sure we focus on that as well as we go forward. Water temps, by the way, as Erin does finally gain latitude and come up through this way right through here, very, very, that's too far west, but you get the idea. Somebody in the house is enjoying some video games. I don't know if you heard that. Kids are still home from school. Bottom line, yeah, Erin's going to have some very warm. Maybe he was excited about the fact that Erin's going to strengthen and stay well off the coast so we don't have to worry about direct impacts of a major hurricane to land areas. That's something we can get excited about. Hurricanes doing what they are supposed to do without directly impacting land. We can all agree. Because, you know, if we didn't have hurricanes, we probably would have something worse, since they are one of the ways that the Earth balances the global heat budget. Overall, though, a very active time in the tropics, and we will keep an eye on everything and see how things progress. Looking a little better today, though, in terms of the future of Erin and direct impacts to the U.S. East Coast. I'll have an update tomorrow morning, and we'll see what happens overnight. Maybe things stay the same. Maybe they change one direction or the other. That's how the weather is. It's very interesting. Even when we think we know, sometimes we do get surprised. Hopefully that won't be the case this time. All right, that is it for me. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Thanks for watching. I'm Mark Sudduth. I'll talk to you again tomorrow morning.